All right, well, should we get it started then?
Sure.
All right, let's do it. Hey, welcome back to the Unbelievable Podcast. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald, and today, another football-centric episode. We'll be talking about the Vikings and Packers game this weekend, shockingly. It is Packers week. Packers fans have been unbelievable. No pun intended, as usual. So we'll break down the matchup a little bit. We'll go over that. We will do our NFL picks of the week as we normally do. And then we will finish up with our NFL gambling lock thing, which both of us didn't do so hot on last week. So hopefully we'll try to
Hey, I pushed.
You pushed. That's not exactly worthy of a lock.
That is. That's fine. You get your money back. No harm done. It's all good.
Okay. Fair enough. The Chargers kind of boned me at the end there. If they kicked a field goal in overtime.
I picked an underdog money line, all right, and I got a push out of that. That's a good lock.
Fair enough. And then we'll finish up with our final thoughts, and then we'll lead off the show here with the Thursday question in a couple moments. But before we do that, let me just quick read this advertising piece, and we'll get her started. So, SOCOM Creative, are you ready to call an audible for your advertising? It's 2019. If you're not advertising your business on Facebook or Instagram, you are losing, period, end of story. Winning Facebook, Instagram ad campaigns are well targeted. It's hard to sell lawn care to people who don't own lawns. Scroll stopping, kind of like stopping the run early in the game. If you want to get your customers' attention on Facebook or Instagram, you've got to find a way to stop the scroll. And lastly, they make money. Winning campaigns aren't about likes and shares. It's all about dollars in your pocket. If you're ready to kick ass with your social media ads, check out our friends over at SOCOM Creative. All they do is come up with ways to help you explode your business and bring you new customers. All right, so Thursday question this week. I've got another football question, and honestly, I should have. This one would have been better suited for like 2 weeks ago, but I still think it'll be fun now. If you were to be cut, so you yourself, if you were to be cut by an NFL team, what would be the reason why you would get cut?
Oh man, Like
what is your? It's basically what the question is. It's a nice way to ask. What is your deficiency? Like, what's the reason that a coach would be like, not true?
That's a good question, actually, because in my athletic experience, I'm the type of I'm the suck up, right? So I'm doing what the coaches want me to do, right? So I'm like when they're around, I'm working really hard and I'm making sure that they see the extra work I'm putting in, all this stuff.
Oh, of course you are.
So that's me. So it wouldn't be that, it wouldn't be for a lack of effort, a lack of any of that stuff. I guess the answer then is just that I would be bad. I would be bad at the position that I'd be asked to play. I would stink at it. So that's my answer. I can't think of anything else. I mean, I never played football, real tackle football in my life. So I don't really have any answer to my skill set of any kind. I feel like I'm decently athletic, but I don't think that's actually, I don't really have any way to measure it. So I guess it would just be because I'm bad.
Bad. Okay. There's a couple of different reasons why I get cut. The one that pops into my head is I'd probably suffer a very minor injury and milk it and miss a lot of practice time for it. When I was in high school, my senior year. My senior year, we were doing two-a-days, and we had to do two-a-days inside, which is just the worst thing ever because it's hot, and we were doing it in a gymnasium. And we were doing crab walks, the thing where it's just the worst. And it was crab walks and rolls and just all this stuff to kind of stretch you out as a lineman and get your muscles pumping, and then also I don't know. I used to work with your flexibility and all kinds of stuff, and I got a hip flexor, and it was the third. It was the third day, and it was at this point I had a a very, very long shot of getting to start at either guard or right tackle because I was a senior and I was big, and the hip flexor did not feel good by any means. But if I cared more, I would have definitely fought
there you
through
go.
it. But I didn't. That leads me directly into the second reason is I don't care enough. You know, I was listening to Pardon My Take today, and they were talking. Someone was talking. It was an older episode, and someone was talking about athletes just in general who don't like football, and they brought up Justin Gilbert, the cornerback that was drafted 8th overall to the Browns, then eventually played for the Steelers, and then just quit the NFL. And they were just saying like he's super talented, loved football, super talented, like otherworldly football player, but he was in it for the money, like did not about football, didn't care at all. That was basically me in high school. Like, I hung out with the punter and the long snapper and made jokes. Like, I was the guy who was catching punts on the sideline. So, like, I don't care enough. Like, it's not like I never had a passion to be the best football player in the world. You know what I mean? Or honestly, I've never. Did you have
a passion for like competition? Like when you were playing, did you like that?
I'm highly competitive as a human being. I mean, you know that. But like with football specifically, I didn't have, and part of that was I didn't play it growing up. So I played it. I started playing freshman year just because all my friends were playing. I needed something to do after school, and which is the wrong reason to play football if you're trying to be good at football. I was just trying to hang out with my friends, so when I was on the field, I definitely cared. I didn't want to get embarrassed. But in terms of like watching film and stuff like that, no, I would just sit in the back and make jokes and fart and laugh at it and stuff like that. Like I remember I was like a coach's nightmare for like the really serious coaches. But at the end of the year, we had a coach that was going through some stuff with his family. Like I think his wife was diagnosed with cancer or something like that. And so me and the punter, who is one of my best friends still, we'd be making jokes with him all the time. And I remember at the banquet at the end of the year, he just was like, "Oh, you guys were the glue guys." And like he was like, "None of the head coaches are going to thank you for what you did because you weren't great." He said this in front of like everyone. He's like, "You weren't good football players, but like you're a lot of fun to have around." And that was my role. But like if I was on Mike Zimmer's team, he would hate me. He'd just absolutely hate me because I had not intense about football. Now baseball, on the other hand, I was pretty intense and competitive about baseball. I was the first guy in the practice field. I was the last one to leave. And until I tore up my shoulder, I was actually pretty good at baseball. So like I cared. But the very moment that I conceded a starting job to a junior, my senior year of high school, I was just like, nah, I'll go to practice 4 times a week. Like, this is cool. So, yeah.
It's a tough question for me to answer because I didn't play football in my life. So but I'm just comparing to other sports, and I wanted to win. I was competitive, and I took that seriously, but I just wasn't good at some of them, and football would probably be one of them I'm just bad at. So
that's probably the number. Like, if you're not, like, that was the thing in high school for people. Like, if you weren't good enough, like at least to compete, like it was really easy to stop caring. Like you weren't getting paid, it wasn't fun because you weren't having success. Practice, especially in football, is a grind. If you go to a football-oriented high school too, like I went to Cretin-Derham Hall, for those who are familiar in the St. Paul area. Like football is like all they care about there, and like if you go there, like they take it really seriously. And then I was actually at St. Thomas Academy for 2 weeks my freshman year before I went to Cretin, and they take it really seriously too. Like it was an absolute grind, like Oklahoma drills, 40-40s, all kinds of crazy stuff, like conditioning. And no, I did not care about. And also, I played line too. Like you really have to love football to care about playing offensive line. And then when I got flipped to defensive line, it's a little bit more fun. But then I was going against Chantrell Henderson during practice, so it was like I was the scout guy that got stuck with the number 1 recruit in the nation. So it was like, why would I care? So yeah, that's why I would get cut. If you have I'm gonna do this moving forward too. I'll post the question on Twitter, and hopefully we'll get some fun responses. And in the future, we'll do it ahead of the show, so that I can actually like read some of your guys' responses too. But so that's the evolution of the Thursday question. So hopefully it gets a little bit better.
I like it.
Continue to progress here. So next on the docket, let's talk some Vikings football here. Obviously, everyone knows the Vikings are playing the Packers this week.
Packer week.
Clearly one of the most important weeks of the year. It's kind of unfortunate that it's coming so early in the season. Really, this whole month of September is like somewhat season defining, despite the fact that there's only 4 games. But it's Atlanta, obviously, NFC good.
You got
NFC
2 road
team.
Division games.
Yeah, and Chicago later on this month, and anyways, they passed the challenge last week. They beat a team that they could be competing with for a wild card spot at the end of the year if things don't necessarily go as planned. And now it's the Packers. So this is sort of this is the type of game that the Vikings are supposed to lose. They're on the road at Lambeau Field. If you can sneak one out here against Green Bay, obviously that bodes well for you moving forward, but you can kind of set the tone for the entire division this week. So this is by no means a must-win game. I'm never going to be the type of analyst or whatever you want to call me now that refers to a game as must-win, but this is definitely the type of game this is a tone setter for sure. This is a huge matchup, and one that can really make the case for the Vikings being the best team in the NFC North.
Yeah, this is how you do it right here. If they win this game, they're number 1 in the NFC North. Because, I think the Bears are going to lose to Denver, but we'll get to that later. Detroit's still bad. They tied the Cardinals after a 24-6 lead, and the Packers snuck by the Bears, not looking so great in the process. Right. Vikings dominated the Falcons at home, so it looks like right now this is kind of your validation point here. You can sort of prove yourselves to be the class of the NFC North, and moving forward, this would be sort of a test to kind of prove that. Last year, went to Green Bay, week 2, tied. Both teams really can say that they should have won that game.
Right.
This week,
honestly, getting out of Lambeau Field with a tie, though, like if they did the same thing again this year, I hate ties as much as the next guy, but in the standings, if you tie on the road against the Packers, then theoretically you win at home later on at US Bank. Like that's still a win. But
yeah, it is. But it's just I feel like the Vikings are in a much better spot. They're a much better team than last year, and I feel like the Packers, they made a lot of improvements on defense for sure, but I still think the Vikings, I don't know, I just feel way better about the Vikings matching up this week than I did at this point last year at Green Bay.
So I guess that kind of covers the general thoughts on the matchup. Let's take a look at the roster now for the Packers. Obviously, being an NFC North opponent, most of our listeners, very highly educated in the Vikings, I assume, are pretty familiar with the roster as it is. But let's go over it anyways. Starting off with the quarterback, Aaron Rodgers is. You just talk. I'm not even going to talk. You talk about Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers. I still think he's the greatest quarterback talent in the NFL, and I'm assuming that I will get backlash for that. But from a pure passing standpoint, he's got the arm talent, he's got the mobility when healthy, and he wins with receivers that are never drafted highly or anything like that. Now, I will say that he did not look very good against the Bears last week. A lot of accuracy issues of what I thought on pretty routine throws. Some that may or may not return against the Vikings, who knows? But I've always had a tremendous respect for him and his game, and if the Vikings can keep him in check, keep him in the pocket, get pressure on him, we can, the Vikings can contain him and contain his success. But he's always going to get his. He's always going to get his. And it's a matter of just containing the amount of his that he is able to get.
Yeah, I don't think you will get backlash for being, a lover of Aaron Rodgers and the amount of, nice things that you tend to say about him. But at the same time, I don't really think that there's any real room for criticism for what you just said, other than just admitting the truth, and that's just that Vikings fans don't like Aaron Rodgers, right? I mean, he is.
Well, that's how it is. I mean, he's on the rival team. This happened with Brett Favre too, until he joined the Vikings. But you always kind of think of the guy as less than he is. Aaron Rodgers is talent-wise best in the NFL. It's just he does have sort of the same thing as Kirk, with road games against above 500 teams. Hasn't been great in terms of his record, but I think he's been limited by his coach in McCarthy forever, been limited by his roster. Hasn't had an offensive line that's been tremendous, very much. Recently they've got Bakhtiari and Crew that are a little bit better, but he's an absolute stud still, and definitely a force to be reckoned with. Whether the stats in terms of the box score haven't been great last couple of years, but he still makes those uncanny throws when they're needed most. Last year, Vikings, and they tied the game last year with 30 seconds left. They should not have. The Packers shouldn't have had a field goal attempt to win that game. Rodgers makes 2 incredible plays, and Crosby luckily missed a kick into regulation. That's the type of stuff that Rodgers does routinely. I could go on and on, obviously, about Aaron Rodgers, but clearly getting pressure on him and containing him is going to be the number one priority, regardless of what side of the ball you're looking at in this game for the Vikings.
Yeah, especially with Andrew Luck retiring now, I think it's pretty definitive that Aaron Rodgers is the most talented quarterback. He has the most arm talent of anyone in the NFL. That's indisputable. His footwork in the pocket is it's annoying even for the guys that play on his team. His offensive linemen have said, repeatedly throughout his career that it's an adjustment to learn how to block for Aaron Rodgers, because he is so good at manipulating the pocket that you honestly don't even know where he is. He's a magician back there. It's incredibly annoying as an opposing fan, and especially as a fan of a team that plays him twice a year. He's just an infuriating person, just in general. Highly competitive, arrogant, but he backs everything up for the most part too, which is just, honestly, it just makes it that much worse that, he says he's so cocky and he's smug, and it's this aura around him is just this. He is exactly what he says he is.
It makes sense that Packers fans are so adamant in their place and cheering for him.
Yeah.
He's a quiet Draymond Green, cocky, really want to play for the guy, but he will piss off opponents.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
He's played the Vikings 21 times throughout his career. His numbers are actually a little bit better than I thought they were. Specifically,
well, it's because pre-Zimmer era, he was just lighting up the Vikings routinely.
Right. The touchdown to interception ratio is particularly impressive at 41-6 throughout the 21 games that he's played against the Vikings. So he's averaging basically 2 touchdowns a game, and he is intercepted basically once out of every 4 games. So there's some math right there for you. 68% completion as well, over 5,000 yards passing. Again, this is over a 21-game period, so extrapolated over the course of a 16-game season, you're looking at pretty significant numbers. Basically, a good Rodgers season is what he's done against the Vikings throughout his career. So he's highly annoying. He's incredible. And he will probably be all of those things. Playing at home specifically, he's as dominant as ever. There's no reason to believe that he'll fall off this weekend. So the Vikings will get his best shot. He will be throwing to a guy that has become arguably a top 5 receiver in the NFL, and I think pretty much every Packers fan will try to blow it in your face that he is in fact a top 5 receiver in the NFL. I tend to disagree, though. I will admit that I am a big fan of Davante Adams, and if he wasn't wearing green and gold, he would be probably one of my favorite receivers in the league. He's a guy that I think he was actually, when we first started doing About the Labor, he was part of the initial draft class that we went through. And when he was coming out of Fresno State, he was my favorite receiver in his draft class. And that was above, a couple different guys that this was in the 2014 draft. I think there's multiple receivers in this class that, Mike Evans, Odell Beckham. I personally was a huge fan of Davante Adams. He ends up falling to the second round. Didn't do a whole lot early in his career, and he's really stepped it up as of late. He's become, I would argue that he's probably a top 10 receiver in the NFL. Top 5 is blasphemous in my opinion, but it is what it is. He's a precise route runner. He's as good as they are in the NFL. In my opinion, he's probably he's on Stephon Diggs' level. I will give Packers fans that in terms of his release off the line of scrimmage, especially against press coverage. He makes some cornerbacks look silly. And he has a tendency. He's very good at working with Rodgers in unison too. So, when Rodgers leaves the pocket,
the Rodgers to Adams back shoulder throw is as annoying as it gets.
Yeah.
Because that's that play where you can have perfect coverage. Rhodes or Waynes or whoever it is can just be blanketing him, and if the timing's right, which they clearly have the chemistry to pull it off, they can complete a 20 to 30 yard pass, and the defense can really do nothing about it.
Yeah, and based off of what we saw last week with Xavier Rhodes on Julio Jones, I would expect that it will be Rhodes on him most of the time with safety help over the top. So you'll be looking at I believe the figure against Julio Jones last week was 70% shadowing him. So you could probably look at a similar number this week. I think Davante Adams is on a similar pedestal. And more importantly, the guys behind Adams on the wide receiver depth chart are not nearly as dangerous, so it would make a lot of sense for Rhodes to just be following him along across the field. Adams also doesn't move into the slot nearly as much as other guys like Larry Fitzgerald or Julio Jones for that matter. So you'll see outside coverage from Rhodes, one-on-one press, trying to break that release off the line of scrimmage throughout the game. And there will be times, like you said, when Adams will just be annoying, and I think it's the mentioning the back shoulder throw, especially in the red zone. It's as frustrating. Like there's sometimes there's just nothing you can really do about that play. Honestly, most of the time there's not much you can do.
I mean, the best thing you can do as a DB is to get a really good press and hit him at the line and throw off the timing.
Yep.
But when Adams is that good off the line, like it's really tough to make that hit that punch at the line of scrimmage. So. But what I'm worried about with Adams is, and again, he hasn't had the big explosive game against the Vikings where he puts up 150 yards or something like that. He's put up a bunch of games with and I think his career high against the Vikings in yards was actually 69.
His numbers across the board, just to get to add some context to the point that you're about to make. He's played 9 games against the Vikings. He has scored 5 touchdowns. I know he's scored 4 touchdowns in the last 4 games against the Vikings. But the catch percentage is only at 54%, and he only has 368 yards. So you could do some mental math there and determine that he's averaging about 30 to 40 yards per game against the Vikings throughout his career.
He's been a red zone killer against the Vikings. It hasn't been the big explosive play, or it hasn't been a deep down the field thing. He's been hitting Rhodes, hitting the Vikings DBs with quick, short routes, and then kind of making a man miss, so to speak, after the catch. That's where he's been dangerous against the Vikings. It's so that's where I would expect the Packers to go back and use Adams, is in the red zone, whether it's back shoulder, whether it's a quick slant, whether it's a little hitch route, whatever it is. Those seem to be the ones that work for Adams against the Vikings and against Rhodes. So that's what I would anticipate Aaron Rodgers, Matt LaFleur, and company use to go after Xavier Rhodes and attack the Vikings secondary.
Yeah, I mean, Adams is a phenomenal receiver basically across the board. Like his skill set is it's timeless. It's a Reggie Wayne type skill set in terms of being able to run routes effectively, break off at the stem, his release off the line of scrimmage. He's the type of guy that can play until he's 35, 36 years old because of who he is as a player. He doesn't rely on athleticism to win, although he is athletic. I'm not trying to downplay that at all. I'm just saying that the skill set that he uses it's what you can consider to be a 10 to 15 year career skill set for a receiver. The thing about him, there isn't really a way to straight up beat Davante Adams, but if you can take away the inside routes, that's where he does the most damage. I think the quick releases, the ones where he can beat you with his feet, that's where he's most dangerous in my opinion. So like you said, the slants, the quick fades, any time where it's just basically a quick move at the line of scrimmage and getting off, messing up that timing there, something that Xavier Rhodes has historically done very well, especially against receivers of his size. Bigger guys, not even bigger guys, I suppose, but standard size NFL X receivers, which Adams is basically the prototype for. That's the type of play that Rhodes tends to do well against, controlling their body weight at the line of scrimmage, not letting them get that hard release. And if you can keep them from getting inside on you on a slant, that tends to be where he does the most damage. So look for the Vikings to have some sort of linebacker help in zone coverage too, especially in those third and short situations where it's basically a 3-step drop from Rodgers and coming over the middle to Adams. I would expect to have Eric Kendricks waiting over the middle again, as he was for Julio Jones. I really think that the design for slowing down Davante Adams is very similar to Julio Jones. He just isn't quite on the same level, though it is fair to say that as Jones continues to age and Adams gets closer to his prime, that those two receivers are actually closer in comparison than people might like to admit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that kind of analogy there, or that comparison, because Julio is now in his 9th or 8th year.
He's 30 years old. So
Adams is probably right about in his prime now. So, I mean, if Adams had the spectacular catch, like the contested catch rate that Diggs and Thielen had, I think he'd be easily a top 5 receiver, if not better, in the NFL. I think that's really the one thing missing from his game. But the other weapons on this offense, Jimmy Graham is still effective. We saw that touchdown catch against the Bears last week where he kind of just out-muscled everybody. I don't want to use the cliche basketball rebound metaphor here, but that's really what he did for that ball. Rodgers didn't really make an accurate throw. He just kind of threw it near him. So he's still a weapon, and Vikings, you mentioned this last episode about covering tight ends, but last year, more specifically, the Vikings didn't cover tight ends extremely well. And then from Jimmy Graham, you got Valdez-Scantling, who will play kind of the number 2 snaps, so to speak, opposite Adams in 2 receiver sets, and then he'll move into the slot most of the time in 3 receiver sets. And then you have Geronimo Allison as well. Those are kind of the guys to worry about in pass catching. I'm mostly scared of Graham out of that group just because of, again, Vikings covering tight ends hasn't been exceptional over last year. And then if you want to count the garbage time stats, Hooper got against against Vikings week 1, same thing there. But outside of Graham, I'm not too worried about Valdez-Scantling and Geronimo Allison, to be honest. Although if I had to pick one, I think I'm more scared of anybody who goes in the slot against Curse, just because from a coverage standpoint, I think Curse could be vulnerable more so than Waynes or any of the Anthony Harris, Harrison Smith, whoever else is going to be in the Vikings secondary.
Absolutely. I agree with all the points that you're making on the kind of the secondary players, the second fiddle to Davante Adams, I suppose. Jimmy Graham being the one piece, like you said, that I would probably keep a little bit more of an eye on. I would expect Anthony Barr to be on him when he's in coverage specifically. You might also see J-Ron Curse as well. I'm kind of curious to see how the Vikings use Curse in coverage specifically. I don't love him as a man coverage guy, but in terms of athleticism, he does match up well with Jimmy Graham. I mean, Graham's not gonna run him out of the stadium. He's not faster than him, and he's not bigger than him either. So really, J-Ron Curse might be the prime matchup one-on-one for Jimmy Graham, because I don't think that Graham can box out Curse.
Problem is that leaves Valdez-Scantling or whoever is in the slot at receiver for Green Bay, against. I mean, where the Vikings put in there at slot corner then, because you don't have Alexander, you don't have Hughes. Is it Chris Boyd? I mean, that might be what you get.
That's really the only answer. It's not going to be Trey Waynes.
That's going to be kind of the X factor matchup, I think, for the Vikings defense is who is that slot, and if it's Cursed, fine, but how do they keep that Packers receiver, whether it's Adams, whether it's Valdez-Scantling, Allison, Trevor Davis, whoever it is, keeping them in check.
Yeah, we've seen the Vikings use both Barr and also Curse to line up over tight ends in the past. It'll be interesting to see which one they go with here, especially because Anthony Barr also tends to be a spy for the quarterback, and we all know how mobile Aaron Rodgers is. He is sneaky fast. It's annoying.
Well, we saw in 2017, Anthony Barr could catch up with Aaron Rodgers.
We do know that. So
cheap shot.
I'm okay with it. It's Packers week. They've been taking cheap shots at us all week on Twitter, and basically, dude, Packers fans. Just as a quick aside, Packers fans have this confidence that it just doesn't go away. They continue to miss the playoffs.
I remember. So Zach Jacobson, our favorite Packers guy.
Yeah, the only Packers fan that I like on the planet.
So I jumped into a Twitter conversation with him a few weeks ago And of course, all these Packer fans that follow him, they're so loyal to him that they just jump in on with me. But I said something about how I'm very impressed with how Packers fans can maintain this confidence after a 6-9-1 season where their head coach just got fired. And I thought I was making a good point, but they seem to. I'm agreeing with you. Their confidence, it's almost cocky to the point where they just
it's cocky for sure. It's cocky. It's arrogant. It's rude. It's everything.
They act superior to everybody else, and I can't believe I couldn't get myself to do that after a 6-9-1 season where your head coach is fired and where your starting quarterback, who is going to the Hall of Fame someday, looked very average.
Yeah. You also taken you can't have a conversation with the Packers fan without it ultimately ending in the fact that the Vikings have no Super Bowls and the Packers have, a couple. So
that's the main argument that they have right now, because the last time the Packers beat the Vikings,
that's all they have. That's all
during the Barack Obama administration.
Yeah, I mean, Eric Thompson tweeted today that if the Vikings win on Sunday, will be the 996th day in a row without the Packers having a win over the Vikings. So if they win on Sunday or if they tie, the Vikings will have beaten have a winning streak that extends, or a non-losing streak, I suppose, is probably more accurate to say, that extends over basically over 1,000 days and close to a three-year period. So, I just don't even indulge. Like I've whatever. Anyways, back to what we're looking at here for the Packers. You got the offensive line too, which is not as impressive as it has been in years past. Corey Linsley's an excellent center. I'll give him that for sure. And Brian Bulaga is as good as they get on the right side. But no David Bakhtiari, unless I've got something wrong there. I don't believe Bakhtiari's out there. So, the left side is it's gonna be. Excuse me, no, Bakhtiari is out there. My bad. I
was wondering. I was like, wait a minute.
No, I missed something up on the depth chart that I was looking up. So you got Bakhtiari, who's an excellent player, and Billy. Sorry, I'm really messing this whole thing up here. Let me just start over. So Bulaga and Bakhtiari are as good as they get at the left and right tackle positions. Specifically, Bakhtiari is great on the left side at protecting the blind side. Bulaga on the right side is as good as it gets in terms of creating running lanes, and also protecting against edge rushers like Danielle Hunter that come off that side of the ball. On the inside, I think they're definitely susceptible. Corey Linsley had a great rookie season. Since then, he's been pedestrian at best. I think that he's kind of like Pat Elflein, where he has you think he's better than he is just because of the pedigree that he has. I think that Linval Joseph could definitely eat him up. Then you got Lane Taylor and Billy Turner at the two guard spots, and I'll just go ahead and say I can't stand Billy Turner as a human being. He's from Minnesota. He's from Mounds View. He graduated my same class in high school. He's as cocky as they get, and he thinks he's a lot better at football than he actually is. So I'm very much looking forward to him getting absolutely bowled over by the interior for the Vikings. I think that Shamar Stephen and Linval Joseph and Hercules and everyone in there. I think every single defensive interior player has a upper hand in the matchup against this interior offensive line.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you there. I really want to see this Griffin versus Bakhtiari matchup, because in the past, for the most part, Bakhtiari has dominated that matchup. But Griffin looked really, really good against Matthews last week against Atlanta. Was getting consistent pressure. Was also still solid against the run. So I'm looking forward to that. Right, exactly. Multiple times it worked, or it got pressure, and then he got the sack off a spin move. And then Hunter on the other side, I think, is going to be. I really like that matchup against Bulaga still.
This is the type of game for Danielle Hunter that separates the guy that we have come to really appreciate, being a great pass rusher, and a guy that is a defensive player of the year candidate, beating a guy who's considered to be one of the best at his position, and of course being in a divisional game as well. This is a set the tone game. This is a money maker game. This is put a stamp on your career type of matchup for Danielle Hunter here.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think he's going to have one of those games. I really like the matchup against Bulaga, and I think it's funny because the Falcons last week were giving so much attention to Griffin, or more than I would have thought. that Hunter most of the time was one-on-one. I don't know if Packers will do the same thing, but if they do, I think it's going to be an issue for Rodgers and company. And if I'm Mike Zimmer, though, right now, I am dialing up so many. I think blitzes are going to win this game because I like the Vikings.
They don't pick up pass rush either.
Right, you're right, and I think you're going to. I mean, obviously with Rodgers and Adams, you're going to allow a few big plays or a few big first down conversions, whatever it is. But I think the positive is going to outweigh the negative if you really get after Rodgers. 5-6 men going after him at a time, and kind of leaving your secondary into man coverage. I think that's going to be you're going to win more times than you're going to lose there.
Yeah. Finishing up the offensive side of the ball with the three running backs. It's basically a two running back committee, but Dexter Williams might see the ball as well. Aaron Jones is the guy. He's the most dangerous. I have no fear with Jamal Williams. He's not. He has very little explosion. He's the type of guy that's going to get you 4 yards no matter what. That's who Jamal Williams is. He's the better pass protector in terms of picking up blitzers, but Aaron Jones is the guy that can beat you with the home run. He's the most talented. I still don't understand why they don't give him the ball more. He can catch the ball well out of the backfield. Talented between the tackles, but most dangerous at getting to the edge and burning you. That's how Aaron Jones wins. The offensive line does a lot of things to help him as well. Really, to me, outside of Devontae Adams, it's Aaron Jones in terms of playmakers for this team. So if you can slow down Aaron Jones and make him one-dimensional, that gives you the best chance to win this game. And the Packers have I don't understand why they do this, but they tend to go one-dimensional a lot faster than they really need to, and they don't like getting Aaron Jones as involved as he probably should be. But he's an extremely talented runner. Just don't be surprised if he breaks up a long gainer. That tends to happen, despite the fact that he does not get enough touches for this offense, in my opinion.
Yep. Yeah, and I was surprised by how much actually Williams was on the field last week for the Packers. Because I thought he took, at least in the second to third quarter, he took a lot of drives away from Jones. If I'm Green Bay, I'm not doing that. I'm keeping Jones on the field for as long as he can last,
I thought with the coaching change that it would be Aaron Jones' show.
Right, exactly.
We haven't seen that yet.
Exactly. And maybe we will see it eventually. I don't know, but
maybe it'll be this week. But again, I have no fear whatsoever with Jamal Williams, and what that means is that Jamal Williams is going to have a 300-yard game this weekend. But that's where I stand with him. So moving over to the defensive side of the ball, like you said at the top of the show, significantly improved defense. A lot of they have playmakers now. How about that? Let's put it that way. They didn't have those in the past, in my opinion. This year they definitely do. Starting with the defensive line, the two ends in their 3-4 scheme. Montravius Adams and Dean Lowry are the two guys that are going to get the most snaps on the outside on their line. Neither of those guys are they're cloggers, in my opinion. Those are guys that are just going to eat up offensive linemen for the Vikings. The one that you need to worry about on the defensive line is the nose tackle Kenny Clark from UCLA. He's coming into his own right now, and he is definitely the guy to raise hell for the Vikings, given that, as we all know, the interior offensive line did not perform well last week,
right.
And as we suspected going into last week, that group between Bradbury, the rookie, and the two guards, Elflein and Klein, are not exactly gelled to the point where I have any confidence in them yet. So Kenny Clark is one to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, that was the main point I was going to make. Kenny Clark versus Elflein / Bradbury / Klein. That's the big matchup. If the Vikings can keep him in check, and then I really believe the zone blocking run scheme is going to, continue to have the same success as it did against Atlanta. If Clark is a problem, then that's where I think the Vikings can maybe be stifled a little bit, and that's when you force the pass a little bit more, and that's where the Vikings had issues last year, is when they didn't run the ball as effectively. They immediately became one-dimensional. I'm hoping Stefanski and Kubiak aren't exactly as eager to be one-dimensional as John DeFilippo was. But I guess we have yet to see whether that's true or not. But defensive line, Kenny Clark, And then, I think as far as linebackers go, Za'Darius Smith also had 10 pressures last week, which tied Hunter for most in the league. So that's another guy to worry about as far as the pass rush is concerned in protecting Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. Yeah, in a 3-4 scheme, as I'm sure most of you are aware, defenses tend to bring down a linebacker. Za'Darius Smith is going to be that guy. He is not linebacker is not what he is. He's an edge rusher, basically. His title is linebacker, but what he does is basically just rush the passer. Like Drew said, 10 pressures last week. He comes from the Ravens organization, originally from Kentucky. Great pass rushing talent. That's basically all he is, though. And that's, for what it's worth, that's all he has to do.
That's very valuable in the NFL,
Yeah.
I mean, if you can rush a passer, you're going to have a job.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike Pettin definitely likes to unleash him. He's the best thing that they've had since Clay Matthews early in his career in terms of getting to the quarterback. He's a dangerous player for sure. He's definitely someone to keep an eye on. It's hard to trust either of the Vikings tackles against him to win that matchup consistently. He'll come from both sides of the defensive line too, so that this isn't just Brian O'Neill or Riley Reif. This is both guys' job to slow down Za'Darius Smith, and he'll beat you with a number of different moves. He's the type of guy that, specifically on third downs is kind of where he makes his money. He's not as great as a run defender. Again, his game is basically get after the quarterback, and it's something that he does, very well and very consistently. So keep an eye on him specifically if he gets in one-on-one matchups. I'd also expect the Vikings to try to chip with the fullback and also offer some help, with Dalvin Cook or Alex Madison as well. He is the focal point in terms of stopping this defense. The two guys that you really need to stop at the line of scrimmage are Za'Darius Smith and Kenny Clark. But Za'Darius Smith is the one that's going to show up in the box score more, whereas Kenny Clark is kind of the devastating interior guy that doesn't show up nearly as much. But if you actually watch film after the game, you'll be probably more impressed with what Kenny Clark is able to do. Za'Darius Smith is just the one that shows up in the box.
Right, Clark is the Linval Joseph, kind of does the dirty work inside, takes up space, a lot of space. And then Smith is going to be kind of the Danielle Hunter, show up in the box score with the sacks type of thing. But in the secondary, Jair Alexander's but the big name, I think. For sure. He's going to be – I think he's going to be on Diggs most of the night just because Diggs will be outside more often. But the best thing about the Packers secondary for me is that Tramon Williams is still playing a lot, and he's going to be – probably at some point or will be matched up with Thielen or Diggs or both of them throughout the game. And I think that's a matchup the Vikings should win every single time. So, and for what it's worth, I did the math on this like about a month ago. Thielen and Diggs against the Packers since 2016 have combined to average I think it's 14 catches for 198 and nearly 2 touchdowns. If you count, you can say lit them up last year in both games. Thielen had like the 200-yard game in 2016. Diggs had nearly a 200-yard game in 2016. These guys love playing the Packers secondary, and I would anticipate another big day for at least one of them on Sunday.
Yeah, Alexander is the playmaker. He's the one that is the most dangerous if you misfire a little bit. For example, I would keep an eye on the out route specifically. He loves to jump that route. Laquan Treadwell isn't on this roster anymore to run the wrong route anymore. So I'm pretty confident in Thielen and Diggs' ability to get to the right spot on the field, and timing not really being an issue. But keep an eye on Alexander specifically to jump routes. He loves to do that. He's been doing it since his Louisville days. He's dangerous for sure. The rest of the secondary overall, as a cumulative unit. This is a strong secondary. Tramon Williams is still relevant. I don't know, I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he's becoming what Terrence Newman was, where he's still relatively effective even at an older advanced.
He's 36
age.
Now.
Yeah. He and Kevin King will be the other two cornerbacks on the outside. They will slide either from inside as well. I would think that Thielen probably is the more dangerous matchup just because in my opinion, they don't defend the nickel. They don't have a great nickel corner that's going to defend that slot spot as well. I think that Thielen can definitely eat against this defense, but you do have to be careful too because this rookie Darnell Savage out of Maryland, he looked really, really, really good against the Bears last week. You know, I've gone on record already by saying that I think that the defensive performance that the Packers put together last week was more a product of Trubisky being garbage than the Packers actually being a great defensive unit. But Savage looked really, really good. I didn't see a welcome to the league moment for him last week. I would expect that he probably, if it's going to happen, this is probably the right week. With the Vikings trotting out 2 Pro Bowl caliber receivers. But he's very good and he's aggressive too. You saw him jump in front of a couple of different passes last week and plays. He probably should have had at least 1 interception last week as well. He's dangerous and he's savage, really.
There you go.
He's a really good player. And then you got Adrian Amos who comes over from the Chicago Bears via Penn State. He is a ball hawk. He had the kind of the game-sealing interception last week against Chicago. I'm sure all you guys were watching that and knew that already. He's also a very talented player, but he's more of a field player. He's kind of like an Ed Reed type. I'm not saying he is Ed Reed. I'm saying that that's the type of position that he plays, a free safety guy that plays the field more than anything else. Solid tackler, not great at it, but a little bit undersized as well. But he's dangerous, and he's a guy that can make you pay if you don't look him off in coverage. So, again, this group as a whole, I think Kevin King is the weakest link. He has not quite developed as many would have hoped coming out of Washington. He's big physical cornerback, but I don't think that he's not exactly technically sound. He's the one that if you're going to beat anyone in this group, it's definitely Kevin King, or you're going to beat Jair Alexander if he's gambling. So that's basically how I look at this secondary. Take advantage of the rookie, or take advantage of the aggressiveness of Jair Alexander, or just straight up Kevin King is not. He's not exactly starter worthy in this league. At least he hasn't proved it to date. So he's the guy that, for what it's worth, I loved him coming out of college too. He just has not developed into the player that I think the Packers thought they were getting for one reason or another. But that's the secondary, and that's their strongest part of their defense, I think. So as a whole, like we said, Kenny Clark, Za'Darius Smith, and probably Jair Alexander being the 3 guys that you're going to want to keep an eye on. But don't write off Darnell Savage either, because it looks like this guy is putting together the type of campaign that will merit defensive rookie of the year votes at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think if I had to make, not that I'm an offensive coordinator or play caller of any kind, but if I had to kind of make one emphasizing point for the game plan this week, which is not what I'm doing. Otherwise, I'd be not doing this show and I'd be getting paid by an NFL team. But I'd say play action, hammer it the entire game. Packers saw the run game against the Falcons. Kirk Cousins is super effective in play action. I think Kubiak and Stefanski should hammer play action on nearly every passing attempt, just to keep the defense leaning a little bit and give Thielen and Diggs that extra little bit of room to maneuver.
I'd open the game with play action straight up. I'd go vertical right away. The Vikings,
and then from there, that the offense should open up. Zone running game should open up even more, and then you're cooking. Then you're really cooking. So that would be I'm saying blitz on defense, and I'm saying play action on offense are kind of the 2 big keys on both sides for me.
So basically, be aggressive against this team. That's kind of what it comes down to. You're on the road too. You have nothing to lose here. This is a game that you're supposed to lose on paper. You can come out with a win. It could be a completely different story for the Vikes. I guess we'll talk about our game predictions in a second here. We might as well just do that now. Ultimately, who you got in this game?
I have Minnesota, and I'm actually surprised that I'm picking the Vikings, because I usually pick against the Vikings at Lambeau, especially when Rodgers is playing. But Minnesota was too dominant against the Falcons for me to go against that. And plus, Green Bay kind of struggled against Chicago, albeit they did win. But Rodgers' inaccuracy was enough for me to kind of, I don't have the confidence in him I used to. So I'm going Minnesota by 3 to 6 points. It won't be a big difference. I think it'll be a close game, but I think Minnesota wins in the end.
I have Minnesota too. My reasoning is pretty straightforward. If you look at all the individual matchups just across the board, there's only one that I think the Packers are better than the Vikings in, and that's quarterback. So Rodgers is going to have to carry. He's going to have to carry this team, and I think, like you said, he doesn't look like he's capable.
And if he goes back to vintage Rodgers, which he probably will on several occasions, but if it's consistent throughout the game, Vikings are probably going to lose, and that's one you have to live with, because there are games in the NFL that are won by just unreal quarterback performances.
If the Packers can't run the ball, this game is over. If you put it 100% on Rodgers' shoulders, this game's over. They need to be able to run the ball against the Vikings, and I don't see them being able to, given that the Vikings do a great job defending the run.
Yeah. Just asked Devontae Freeman and Ito Smith last week.
Yeah. So, all right. So since we already went through one, let's continue here with our game predictions throughout across the NFL. Starting off with the Thursday game, Tampa Bay at Carolina.
Tampa Bay at Carolina. I got to go Carolina just because the Bucs looked horrendous. Like, Jameis Winston is still really, really bad for Tampa Bay, despite, I kind of was hoping that Bruce Arians and company would figure some things out, put something together that would work for them. But the turnovers are still there from Jameis, and I'm not going to buy them on the road against anybody, let alone Carolina.
Yeah, Carolina is very underrated. I think that's partially because of the fact that the Saints are in their division and one of the best teams in the league, and also the fact that they've got three very good quarterbacks in Jameis Winston in this division. So since Jameis Winston is not the one quarterback in Carolina, I am also taking the Panthers, which moves us to San Francisco at Cincinnati. You've got Jimmy Garoppolo going into Cincinnati. The Bengals almost pulled off Zach Taylor's first career win as a head coach last week. Now they have a bit of an easier matchup this week against a far less dominant NFC West team.
I have Cincinnati in this game just because I was impressed by how they showed up against Seattle last week. That was a game I was expecting to be a blowout, and they made it close on the road in a tough environment. Now at home against a lesser team, I'm going to go Cincinnati.
I'm also saying Cincinnati. I think that the speed on Cincinnati's offense can be lethal against San Francisco. Akello Willowspoon is not known for his speed. Richard Sherman is a little bit over the hill. Still a good player, but I like their receivers, and Andy Dalton's going to give him every chance to. I mean, that guy just does not care where he throws the football. So I'm going to take Cincinnati too. They're playing at home. That doesn't hurt the prediction either. So Bengals over San Francisco or 49ers. On to the next one here. Chargers at Detroit. I can pretty much lock in your game pick here, I assume.
Yep. I don't need to see anything. Chargers.
Yeah, I'm going Chargers too. Detroit, there's not much to say. I mean, Chargers are one of the best teams in the NFL. Detroit is not that. That was the type of game last week where if you're going, like, in my bold prediction from a couple weeks ago, I said that Detroit would finish second in the NFC North. Last week was the type of game that if you're gonna place there, that you need to get a win. They didn't, so they're the same old Detroit as far as I can see. And until further notice, I will not be picking Detroit unless it's I really don't think there are very few teams in this league right now that I'm confident that Detroit will win against. So I'll take the Chargers as well. Minnesota, Green Bay, we already did. Both of us are going with Minnesota, which leads to Indianapolis at Tennessee, an AFC South matchup. Another matchup that could be a backbreaker for either team towards the end of the season here. Jacoby Brissett looked pretty good last week. Didn't quite do enough to beat the Chargers, but did get him to overtime. I thought he, based on my mortal lock last week for gambling, performed considerably better than I thought he would. T.Y. Hilton's still very effective. Quentin Nelson is just disgusting. They see Marcus Mariota and an offense that played extremely well against Cleveland. They'll try to replicate their performance this week at home.
Yeah, I got Tennessee. Like I've said all along, I'm buying the Titans this year. That defense is for real. There's a lot of it's a little bit of the early stages of the Zimmer era, that defense, where there's like not a lot of huge names, but as a unit, they perform really well. So I got Tennessee at home.
Yeah, I'm also taking Tennessee. Again, the Colts are one of the best rosters in the NFL. It's just very hard to be confident in them when you shift to Jacoby Brissett 2 weeks before the season starts. Tennessee's coming off of probably their best performance in the last 5 years last week. They went into Cleveland and absolutely destroyed the Browns and dismantled them in every way possible. Delaney Walker looks ageless too. He's 35, which is I didn't realize that, but he's still a dominant player. If they can get Corey Davis involved too, this could be I'm with you. I think they could run the AFC South, especially with Houston not being able to block anything. So I'll go Tennessee too. Which leads us to New England at Miami. I don't think there's any analysis needed here.
You can skip this one.
This
Patriots.
is going to be a blowout. Patriots, yeah. Buffalo at the New York Giants.
I'm picking the Giants, which I'm not confident in, but I don't know. The Bills are still the Bills to me. So, which the Giants are also still the Giants, I guess. But I don't know. I wouldn't be confident with either pick.
I have the Giants too, and my reasoning behind it is that Buffalo's best facet of their team is their defense. They do not do well offensively. They have it. When Josh Allen's very, very sporadically looks good offensively, he is not taking the next step just yet. And I think that the best thing that Buffalo does is stop the run, and that they've got Saquon Barkley this week, and I don't think anyone's stopping Saquon Barkley this year. So I've got the Giants.
Fair.
Excuse me. That moves us to Seattle at Pittsburgh.
I am very, very confident in Seattle in this game, and I'm going to talk more about them in my Lock of the Week segment. So give me the Seahawks.
I'm taking Pittsburgh because every time the Steelers shit the bed, they tend to come back and play to their competition level the very next week. So I will take the Steelers to redeem themselves this week. Which leads to Dallas at Washington.
Yeah, Washington is still bad, despite their strong start last week against Philly. But I'm going to go with Dallas in this one. And I will say, so apparently Washington and Miami play each other this year. So that's going to kind of hurt my 0-16 bold prediction. Yeah, never really thought about that. Yeah. But I still think one of those teams is going to go 0-16.
Yeah, Washington is bad. Dallas is good, really good. That's all. That's really all the analysis you need here. Dallas is going to win that game. They're going to win that football game for sure. Lock that one in. Arizona at Baltimore is the next one on the docket.
Yeah, Baltimore. That's another one, another lopsided matchup here.
Yeah, Baltimore looked pretty damn good last week. Arizona looked pretty damn bad up until the fourth quarter. Baltimore's not going to let Arizona get away with what they did last week against Detroit. It's simply not going to happen. Lamar Jackson looks like an MVP candidate. He'll get a chance to kind of reinforce that notion, and I think that he will with a Baltimore win. Jacksonville at Houston, another AFC South matchup. Dangerous spot for Houston to be in here. This is a game that they probably have to win.
Yeah, I think if this is in Jacksonville, I pick the Jags, but I'm Houston at home.
I'm going with Houston as well. They're the better football team. The one thing that I will say, this is definitely a dangerous game because Houston can't block and Jacksonville can definitely pass rush. So I would just keep an eye on
Deshaun Watson. This is the dangerous game, is what you're saying.
Yeah, he might die. Yeah, for sure, because they can't block at all. So I still think he finds a way to win this game because I think he's I think he has become a top 5 quarterback in the NFL.
By the way, how about the Bears trading up a spot in the draft to skip over Deshaun Watson and Pat Mahomes for Mitch Trubisky?
That's going to be a tough one to explain if Ryan Pace wants to get another job when he gets fired from the Bears eventually. It's going to be a very tough one to explain. Speaking of Pat Mahomes, Kansas City at Oakland.
I really want to pick the Raiders, but I'm going to go with the Chiefs. The MVP is on the Chiefs, and despite losing Tyreek Hill, I still trust Andy Reid to put up like 40 points in this game, and I'm not sure Derek Carr can put up that many for Oakland.
Kansas City too. Sammy Watkins looks better than he ever has. Period. That cut that he made, that one cut on his first touchdown run, was out of this world stuff. I've got Kansas City rolling by Oakland. I still think they're a disaster, although I do commend them for coming out and playing tremendous football in the wake of the whole Antonio Brown thing that went down there. But they're not beating the Chiefs. That's not happening. This is a game where you flex. If you're Kansas City, you flex your power here in the AFC West for sure. Chicago at Denver.
I got Denver. I'm definitely not wacko for Flacco or anything, but I think Vic Fangio against his old team at home. I like the Broncos, and that's about. And again, I don't like the Bears this year for a lot of the reasons I've said. Like positive, like the hangover from a really successful season that you didn't expect. Trubisky just isn't very good. I like the Broncos at home.
If anyone knows how to beat Trubisky other than himself, it's Vic Fangio for sure. With that said, I'm still going to take Chicago. Chicago looked bad last week. Denver probably looked worse.
They probably did.
Flacco is over the hill.
If the Broncos win this game, like I say, it's going to be like 9-6 or something like that,
which is entirely possible. But I will take Chicago here, which leads us to probably the best matchup of the weekend here. New Orleans at the Los Angeles Rams.
This is another game where strictly I'm picking by the home field advantage here. I think both teams are very evenly matched, as we saw last year in the NFC Championship game. I got the Rams winning a close one.
Yeah, I'm taking New Orleans to get redemption. It's really as simple as that. New Orleans should have won that game last year. I really, really think this is the best team in the NFL right now. They reinforced that notion when they were on their heels last week, and Drew Brees just showed that he's a Hall of Famer. And Will Lutz, my God. And he's hilarious, too, by the way. I almost like Will Lutz, but until he takes that uniform off, it's not possible. But New Orleans wins this one. Shootout, bet the over for sure. Philadelphia at Atlanta. Another good matchup, honestly.
I'm picking Atlanta, and I'm picking them because they're weird. I feel like they're not going to put together two putrid performances in a row, and they're at home. I like the Falcons. I probably now that I think about this, I put way too much weight into picking the home team, but it's already done. I got the Falcons.
I'm also taking Atlanta. Philadelphia did not look great until, late last week. Deshaun Jackson is very, very good. I don't expect him to get the type of separation he got this week. You just don't do that. What Washington allowed Deshaun Jackson to do last week was just that's why you think that this team might only win like a game or two. Mm-hmm. I don't see Atlanta allowing that to happen, even with a very average secondary at best. But I'm taking Atlanta too. I also hate the Eagles, so might be just a biased pick straight up. So that leads us to the Monday night game, which on paper does not sound like a good matchup, but these are two teams in Cleveland and the New York Jets that kind of came into this year with expectations, and both of them pissed off their fans last week. So one team is going to get back to 500, and one team is going to continue to reinforce the beliefs that their fans held last season and before.
Yeah, I got Cleveland. I just don't see that happening again. What happened in the Titans game last week? Give me Baker, give me Odell, give me Landry, give me all those weapons. They have to put it together at some point. I think it's happening against the Jets.
Yeah, I've got Cleveland too. If they were not playing against each other, and you asked me, which team is more likely to rebound, I would definitely say Cleveland. I still don't think the Jets are that good. I don't buy Sam Darnold like most people do. He's fine, but people are trying to project him as this superstar player on the brink of mass destruction.
That's the New York media for you.
And I just don't see it. I think he's a really nice guy, and that's why people like him. He's just he's really nice with great hair. But that doesn't play on the football field, so I'll take Cleveland. That rounds out our NFL picks for the week, which leads us into our gambling NFL lock of the week. Like I said before, I missed by 0.5 last week because they don't kick a field goal in overtime, which is stupid, by the way. 6-point victory for the Chargers. They don't cover the 6.5-point spread. You pushed because Arizona tied. So that leads us to week 2. 1-1 for us. Who's your pick?
I got Seattle covering. I think they're 4 now. Yep, they're 4-point underdogs. They were, I think, 5.5 or 6 earlier in the week. But the Steelers looked so awful against the Patriots. Completely uninspired football. Big Ben quit early in that game. Seattle, against Cincinnati, without those 2 long touchdowns to John Ross that may or may not have been fluky, you're looking at a completely different game. So I think Seattle is the pick here against the spread, and I think they're going to win the game as well.
Yeah, I'm also going to take the spread here, but I'm looking at Carolina and Tampa Bay. You kind of explained my thought process here earlier. I'm taking Carolina -7, and the 2 reasons being Carolina is underrated. They're a better team than a lot of people give them credit for because of the division that they play in. And number 2 is Tampa Bay is a worse team than people give them credit for. I don't think Jameis Winston is fixable. People have been making that joke all week. It's not a joke to me. It's not funny. Jameis Winston is a bad quarterback. He makes terrible decisions. Ron Rivera is an interesting coach, but he definitely knows defense. And I'm not going to be shocked if Jameis Winston throws another pick 6 again this week because he just in everything
he can't stop it.
In everything he does in life, he just always makes poor decisions. It doesn't matter if he's quarterbacking or stealing crab legs. Like he just doesn't get the guy doesn't get it. I don't think he ever will. I don't think there's anything that he can do. I feel sorry for Mike Evans. Because that offense isn't getting off the ground unless Jameis Winston can figure it out, and he's not going to do it against Carolina. So Carolina -7 is my pick. I'm actually going to take Carolina +7.5. That'll give you a +110 if you're betting on depending on what sports book you bet on. I personally
use -7 and -110.
What's that?
-7 and -110 for Carolina.
It's Carolina is -7 on the spread. But you can get them on certain sports books. I use 5 dimes. You can get them at -7.5 and get a +10 money line associated with it. So you can make a little bit more money for adding that extra point, for adding that extra half point. And I think that Carolina is going to end up winning this game by 10-14, just because I think there's going to be a defensive touchdown here. So bet that Carolina -7.
Yeah, I'm betting my lock is obviously Seattle spread, but I'm going. I've already got money on the money line, so I think they're beating Pittsburgh. I'm
also betting this is not counting towards our locks here, but I'm also betting the Vikings this week too. I'm pissed off that I didn't bet the Vikings last week. I believe the Vikings right now are sitting at +140 on the money line. They're also giving the Vikings 3 points right now too on the spread. I would bet the Vikings on Sunday. I'm pretty confident in what they're able. We already broke it down over the course of the show, but if you're looking to make a quick $5, I mean, I think that's putting money to good use on that money line there. Plus 140 is a solid line for for $10. You can make a quick 14. I think the Vikings are a pretty safe pick too. So not a lock because it is a division rival, but I am confident in that bet. So that's where I stand, and that leads us to the end of the show here. Any final thoughts for our dedicated listening audience here?
I don't really have any. Again, if there's one thing as far as this game goes, like if Aaron Rodgers beats the Vikings, which is very entirely possible, I warned you. I've always been warning you. This guy he's capable of it out of nowhere. He didn't look it against the Bears.
Yeah.
He'll show up at random times.
My final thought here, I'd like to start the Christian McCaffrey MVP campaign today.
He's a running back, though.
He is a running back, but he's not just a running back. He's an offensive weapon. He's going to come damn near 1,000 season. And if Carolina can pull its head out of his ass and get some wins here, he's going to get votes. And I want to start that campaign today because I think that in a couple hours when you guys begin watching this Thursday night game, you're gonna see why Christian McCaffrey is special.
He's on my fantasy team.
He's wildly talented. It's not even fair. The route that he runs, the
pretty
catches
stupid that he wasn't the first running back picked in that draft. I don't know how Leonard Fournette made it higher than him.
I think we all know why he wasn't the first running back taken. I'm not going to say it out loud, but I think you guys all know why. So that's I believe that's the end of the show here. So thanks for listening. As always, we appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe. Hit that button on iTunes. Leave us a review if you can. It's not a hard thing to do. Just hit the stars on your podcast app.
Quite the sales pitch you're giving here.
Yeah, I'm not trying to sell anything. Like if you want to do it, if you don't. It's not going to kill us, but we do appreciate it getting those reviews. It boosts our status on iTunes, gives us the opportunity for other people to find our podcast that wouldn't otherwise see it. On Twitter at unbelievable_mn. Find us on there. Drew runs that social media account, tries to get you guys engaged, and hopefully that continues to work and you guys enjoy that content there. And then I believe that's about it. Oh yeah, like and subscribe on YouTube too if you like watching us talk instead of listening to us talk. That's about it. So hopefully the next time we talk to you guys, the Vikings will have left Lambeau Field with the W, and we will catch you guys next week.